Thank you for tuning in to Teaching for the Culture. This is your host, Bianca Goolsby, and I'm here with Lauren. And Lauren shared something that I think needs everyone's attention. This is something that's impacting her and her child, and I know that is impacting others out here. So I wanted to give her a safe space so that she could tell her story. Hey, Lauren, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm Lauren. I have a 6-year-old son. His name is Logan, that is currently attending school remote learning. He is high risk. He has a history of respiratory failure with hypoxia. So, at his doctor's discretion, we've been remote learning since March. The first part of March through May, it went wonderfully, but the school had a change in principal over the summer. And when we started remote learning in August, they changed the format. They are now expecting the children to live stream from 7:40 a.m. to 2:40 p.m. in front of a webcam, which is a difficult task for any 6-year-old. But my child also has ADHD and he's on an IEP. So some of the things that are hard for him are to sit still because of the ADHD, and he's easily distracted. I reached out to the principal in late August, as well as the school counselor, asking if we could have a meeting to go back over his IEP, because at the time that it was written, online learning wasn't even thought of. So it needed accommodations added to kind of address some of those issues with online learning, such as giving him frequent breaks. And he wasn't getting his one-on-one instruction or any of his other accommodations that were in his IEP while he was online learning. They responded back to me and told me we would have a meeting September 28th to go over that. On September 28th, when we began that meeting, instead of it being about how we could accommodate Logan, the principal told me he would give me 24 hours to file an intent to withdraw my child, or he would expel him for inattentiveness, which is actually a symptom of ADHD. And he told me, "You don't want that on his record, do you?"
Wow.
We went back and forth about that. I told him I am not withdrawing my child. He has every right to be there. It's not his fault that we're in the midst of a pandemic and he has to learn online. And at that time, I contacted the Ohio Department of Education in search of an advocate and what the next steps might be to try to prevent this from happening, because it's already hard enough for the children to have to learn online, to be separated from their peers, and just learning new technology. I mean, some of the programs that they use, they had no prior experience with. He's 6 years old. Prior to the pandemic, he had never used a Chromebook. So it kind of started a drag out between myself and the principal, just trying to get answers and trying to work it out. Once he found out I had contacted ODE, he kind of backed off on the expulsion, and instead he started targeting us from different angles. He started sitting in the classroom with a notebook where my child could see him in front of the camera. And every time my son moved or did anything, he would write it down on the piece of paper. It would say screenshot captured across our screen where he was taking screenshots of them. And he would start live recording. So it would pop up REC in red at the top, which my child would get upset. He's like, "Why is he taking pictures of me? Why is he recording me?" Then he started accusing us of cheating on tests. And anytime my son would have a test, he would tell him he had to come off mute when he took it, but his peers did not. And he would record my child, but not his peers. And it started basically discriminating against him. He was sending me emails telling me that if I spoke to my child during the test, then he was getting a 0. But one of his accommodations on his IEP is he gets one-on-one read out loud. And they're not providing that in this setting through online. So I was reading his test out loud to him because I'm sitting right there by him to help him. So meaning they weren't, I was doing it. And he instead was accusing us of cheating. Even just this past week, my son was writing his journal entry for school, and he wrote it in front of the camera. And I received an email afterwards telling me it wasn't his handwriting. There's just been numerous little incidents. On November 11th, we were able to have a meeting with the Department of Education and the principal, and they actually signed an agreement with an updated service plan that they were going to start providing the services. And I thought, we had finally had a breakthrough. We were finally going to get somewhere. A week or so later, on November 19th, they had another meeting with the facilitator, and it was supposed to be for the finalization of everything that we had resolved the issue. Instead, the principal said that if I didn't withdraw him, he was going to expel him. And this time he gave a date. He said that we had until January 4th to withdraw him, or he was starting the expulsion process.
Wow.
Which he has now changed to December 18th. Right now, I'm just waiting for their attorney that they hired to write the expulsion paper. But his reasoning is that it's inattentive. And he told me that inattentiveness is not a symptom or a behavior of ADHD. And he said that the fact that my child's scores are inconclusive, he said that one day they may be higher, next lower. And I explained to him that that is also a symptom of ADHD because how he does on a test depends on his behavior that day. If he's hyper and distracted, obviously he's going to do more poorly than other days where he may be more focused. One of the big symptoms of ADHD is they're inconsistent. And then he changed it when I told him he was expelling my child for having ADHD, basically. He's discriminating against him because he has a disability. He told me that he hadn't made any progress since August and that online learning was ineffective for him and therefore he was expelling him. However, they administer something called a STAR test, which shows the placement of the child. And I don't know if you can see this. This is his report from October until recently. And you can see it's an upward trend. It's obviously effective, and he is definitely making progress. He actually scored one of the highest scores in his class. But they're still saying that it's ineffective. He just does not want to accommodate him. At one point in a conversation on the phone, he told me that they generally only educate normal children and that it was a waste of his teacher's time and resources because they're having to spend additional time.
Wow. So, wow.
Tell her about the double testing.
Yes, that's another thing. My son is having to repeat his tests so he can take them with the class. And if he does well with his test on the class, to ensure he doesn't cheat, they're making him repeat his test and take it a second time the same day, one-on-one with a teacher. So at that point, he's upset because this just happened again yesterday. He took a 27-question reading test, and he scored an 81% on it. So then at 1 o'clock, when he's supposed to get one-on-one time to go over his areas of weakness, instead of doing that, they're utilizing that time to try to prove if he's cheating or not. And they made him retake the entire 27-question test. And he told the teacher repeatedly, he's like, I already did this earlier. I already gave you the answers. Why do I have to do this again? He just doesn't understand. And honestly, either do I, but they make him repeat all of his tests that way. And I even asked them, if you're going to do that, then don't make him take it with the class. Just do it one-on-one. And they're still just doing it.
I'm just mind blown at what you and your child are dealing with. And I apologize. And this is something that definitely needs attention. And I'm sure that this is not just happening to your child, but many children are not getting the services and the accommodations that they need in this pandemic. And we need to remember grace when we're dealing with this new world and we're living in and educating our kids. So it seems when you reached out to the school that they are intentionally trying to push your kid out. Is this the only child that you have at that school?
My 10-year-old daughter, well, she actually just turned 11 Thursday, goes there as well. And she's supposed to be on a 504 plan, and she's supposed to receive accommodations, and they are not doing any of them at all. I spoke with the school counselor just the other day again about it, and she said that everyone is getting modifications because everyone has a different workload because they're online, so that they don't have to make individual accommodations for my child, even though it specifically says that in the 504 plan that they signed and agreed to. And
Wow.
she was telling me that they didn't have to do that, as well as that I could look for other schools if I wasn't happy.
Wow. So, what has I know that you had reached out to different organizations about what was taking place. Can you give us like a summary of all the steps that you've done thus far?
I reached out to the Ohio Department of Education. I initiated a request for mediation, and that evolved into a request for facilitation where they brought in a third-party facilitator. I also reached out to the superintendent of the school district and the superintendent of ODE, and I filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights out of Cleveland, Ohio. I was told I still need to file a complaint with the Office of Agriculture because they receive federal funding. I actually have not, I just found that out yesterday and I have not done that step yet. But what I'm finding is that everything is backlogged, that there is an overwhelming amount of children that are in this same situation because of the pandemic and schools not accommodating them with remote learning. And I was told that it can take up to 12 weeks. So I'm still
Wow.
kind of waiting. And a lot of this I began back in September. So it's
Wow.
definitely been a process.
For sure. Um, so how can the community help support you in this fight?
I'm hoping that by bringing attention to the matter, that perhaps they reevaluate their position and that it can help bring change forward. It should not be this way. This is stressful enough of a time on children. They're already separated from their peers. They're having to navigate through new systems and learn by other means, and they miss that social interaction. And then to not receive your services on top of that, and then have the added aspect of having to go to a new school, especially during a pandemic, to have to go find a new school and enroll them somewhere else remotely, and then become acclimated to other children. It just should not be happening. He should have to answer for this, and I'm not getting anywhere. I still haven't received the paperwork that shows anything in writing, aside from an email where he told me to file to withdrawal or he was going to expel him for inattentiveness. It's just a mess.
I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this. And so, what I can do is ensure that there's people that see it and send it off to the right people using the tools of social media so your voice can be heard. And I know that this is very stressful for you and your child. And I just want to just say thank you for coming on the platform and sharing your story. I know that it's been difficult for you, and we need accountability, and we need the people that can make decisions to speak up and advocate for children to ensure that they're getting the resources that they need to be successful. We're harming children if we don't.
Yes, and I appreciate that. And I've even went as far as having his physicians write letters explaining behaviors of ADHD to the school and provided those to the principal. And they just won't budge. He doesn't care.
Wow. Folks, we need to be intentional with these school systems and what they're doing to our children. And we need to make sure that our schools are providing resources to our kids and that they are accommodating our children and helping them grow and thrive. And it requires everyone to be intentional and paying attention. So, thank you again, Lauren, for sharing your story. I definitely will pass this to the people that need to hear it. And I'm pretty sure that there's other people in your same position that will probably reach out or learn more about your story. So I will definitely put a way where people can reach you after they hear this. So thank y'all for tuning in again to Teaching for the Culture. This is Bianca Goolsby, and you guys have a great day.
Thank you.